Ian, as my smartest friend, I was really hoping you would help answer this trivia question for me. Are you ready?
I really hope I'm not your smartest friend, but yes, I'm ready.
Okay, great. So, Ian, why is it that cockroaches are often found dead on their back? Or maybe a better way to ask this, why do cockroaches die on their back?
I think of this as an existential problem. I think that they get so caught up in the drama of their daily lives,
right?
The constant coming and going, and they're always facing down. You know, the cockroaches are always like, it's just like, what's right? What are the crumbs right in front of me? You know, like I'm always thinking of the crumbs. Mm-hmm. And then when they die, they reach the end of their cockroach life, and they go, I've wasted my life, much like humans. They go, I've wasted my life. And in a final act of desperation, they hurl themselves back, and they look up, at the wondrous blue sky or the depth of man's fluorescent tubes that we've made in the bathroom of a Denny's, and they say, if I could do it all over again, I would. And then they die because of, I'm assuming they ate cockroach poison. And that's the last thing that they say and do.
Yeah, that's spot on, Ian, as always. So without start the show!
What's up, cow sluts? Welcome to Camp Reeducation. It's an immersive boot camp into the world we thought we knew. We are your hosts, Ian and Shaye, diving headfirst, concluding, our 2-week immersion into the world of country music camp. Shaye?
Yes.
Your turn to do something now.
Finally, for once, they need me. They want me. So to anyone wondering what the real answer for why cockroaches end up dying on their back, honestly, Ian, that was pretty close. Like, I'm not gonna lie. like the answer that I found online was just that it's like a spasm. You know, that they like have a spasm, and then when they're on like a clean linoleum floor, which is where we often find them on their backs, that we're like, oh, they're dying on their backs, whatever. But it's just because they have nothing to grasp onto. They've had nerve damage. They're not very dexterous at that point. But I'd like to. I mean, it's totally true, or possible at least, that they're doing that intentionally. They're like, fuck it, slamming one limb down, and they're like, I want to see the sky. And like as you said, to their dismay, it's just the tile paneling in the high school bathroom.
This literally seems like the plot of a Disney movie. Like it's like Ratatouille, but it's a cockroach that wants to see the sky before he dies.
Yeah, this is Bug's Life 3D or something. Coming to theaters near you. Yeah.
Oh my God. All right. Well, speaking of A Bug's Life, we have the next best thing, which is what we kind of do. Because in A Bug's Life, it's this lovely proletarian film where these bugs realize that like they're the ones who control the means of production, and at any time they could take back the factory from the grasshoppers. And I feel like that's kind of what country music tried to be for a long time, like a music of the people. And has it been reduced to mere musical confetti? Is it nothing more than decoration on the decadent American landscape, slowly rotting on the sun, lying on its back like a cockroach going, ah! Ah!
All this and more in today's episode of Camp Reeducation. But before we get too far into it, we have the amazing sultry sounds of today's featured artist. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll have to go to Spotify to hear it, but right now we get to bathe in the beautiful sonic bliss of the Jerichos with their song, Even If You Are a Cactus. If you want to hear that entire song, make sure you stick around to the very end where we will play it in full. And beyond our beautiful, amazing musical guest, we also have our country music guest who serves today the role of our resident country music expert, at least far more knowledgeable than we are. That, of course, is Josh Tobias. He is a musician who previously, as we will talk about at great length in a little bit here, previously was a pop and R&B singer and producer, and he has recently made the switch to country music, and we got to pick his brain about that transition and get to learn a little bit more about his journey.
So my name is Joshua Tobias. I am a singer-songwriter. I've been putting out music since, say, 2015, and I have recently decided to make the pivot into country music. And if you have listened to my music, you'll know that that is quite a significant pivot. And I'm just navigating that right now. I'm from Long Island. I'm Jewish. I think I could probably carve out somewhat of a niche in the country space, and that's what I'm hoping to do within the next few years.
Yeah, so be sure to check him out. You'll hear him momentarily. And then just a friendly reminder for anybody listening, if you're watching us, you should be subscribed. If you're not already, what are you doing? And if you're listening to us, you should be subscribed so you can watch us. What are you doing? Just a friendly reminder again that we are now on, what? I said friendly reminder. Anyway, fuck it. Yeah, we're on YouTube. Don't forget, we're on Patreon. If you want to hear today's interview in full, it was a rip-roaring good time. You can go to campreeducation.com/Patreon. No, that's backwards. You can go to patreon.com/Camp Reeducation, and you can subscribe to get access to interviews and other fun goodies. So it was interesting talking to Josh because I don't think two things. Number one, he is making the transition into country. So I think that he is probably thinking about country far more than somebody who might already well be established and is more of in what is water situation and answer every question with, well, fuck, man, that's just country, and then never clarifying. And then two, he's like, I guess he's Jewish. No, he is. He may be country music's first Jewish guy.
Yes, maybe. And so I guess just jumping right into it, we talked to him about it. We're like, well, country has a huge diversity problem. So like, how do you deal with the diversity in country music? And like, how do you deal with making the transition of being a Jew? Are you allowed to say a Jew? For some reason,
it didn't sound good the way you said it just then.
No, I feel like South Park made that like a slur now. I don't know. A Jewish person. Whatever. We asked him these questions, and then he had an answer. We're about to play that for you right now. Are you allowed to say Jew? Like, what's the rule?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, and this is getting a little bit conspiratorial, but I think maybe pop country music is probably used as a vehicle for to push like a Protestant, white kind of American ideal for what certain powerful people might believe is what real Americans look like. And I think country music has probably been used as a tool for that means. I think since it became really popular. And again, that's not something that I can really confirm. But
I think we'd be inclined to agree with you on that.
I think so too.
You're in good company when you say that.
Yeah, so it's not really like it's at no fault of the artists who are dominating the genre. But I think that's what the reality is. And it's funny because I am struggling with how open I want to be and how I guess what's the word, intentional I want to be with my Jewishness as I navigate country music. And I've actually decided that I'm just gonna put out good old country music and just try to get as much buzz as I can purely based off the merit of my music, and then ease people into the reality that I am a J.
Maybe not intentionally, but I do think it's befitting for him to say conspiratorial, especially considering he's going to be making music for a demographic that I think largely also believes that Jews control the media. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be, I think, it's weird. Like, I wouldn't say like, oh, he should hide that. But my thought is like, man, they're going to find out he's Jewish and they're going to be like, oh, the Jews are infiltrating our music now. Nothing's safe. Nothing's sacred.
No, as soon as he said that, and it was interesting because during our conversation, it was clear. I mean, even just in that clip, it was clear. He's just like, yeah, I don't know if I really want to drop the J card yet. And I can't imagine. I feel like he's denying the inherent history of racism that country music has had when he's talking about this, because it seems like he's going in somewhat, very open-minded to the point where it's like maybe even naive to assume. I mean, he's like, he's a white passing dude, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to comment on his fucking ethnic appearance. But
yeah, I think we should row right out of this current that we're being swept into.
But I think honestly, I feel like that matters in this genre. Like, I think the listeners of country music are going to care if this person is actually white, actually with air quotes, or like if they're white enough to be making country music, especially when they find out that he's a Jewish man from Long Island. Like, I can't imagine like fucking your average Toby Keith listener or like Brooks and Dunn listener being like, man, if only they were Jewish and from Long Island, then they could really understand my unique struggle.
Identity is so much at the forefront of country music, and it gets to the heart of this question we were asking ourselves last week, whether it's just cynicism that a lot of these musicians are essentially, maybe not necessarily writing from experience, but they're telling stories about what they think people's experiences are. And the more successful they get in the genre, the farther away they get from the average person's lived experience. And at what point are you more just like perpetuating a fantasy that has like no ties or roots in reality? And then, it's just a system that kind of, I don't want to say perpetuates again, but yeah, like it just self-perpetuates, right? It's interesting that he's deciding to do that. Because does it feel, I feel bad saying this because I liked Josh a lot and I really appreciated him coming on, but does that in and of itself feel inauthentic? So like, and why would you even want to make music for people that you feel you have to hide something from? Like, never when I was making music was I like, I better leave out that my wiener is curved weird.
In fact, some people made entire careers off of that, like Little Dicky. Like the authenticity is what people crave, which is interesting because like when you ask people, like I remember when fucking Brad Paisley was doing his song about air quotes, what is country at the CMAs in like 2010 or 2011. They talked about sincerity and being genuine and being real. And if you have to hide that authenticity from your fans, like you're inherently being dishonest to the idea of country music, which is fascinating because and only because of like the racist fans that you're trying to have support you, when you're trying to sell an idea to like a group of people who inherently are could be interested if it weren't for some other like racist. I don't know. I feel like I'm just chalking everything up to racism here, and like I feel like there's like an oversimplification. I'm just like saying like country music fans are just racist, but I feel like they are, man. Like I don't know. I feel like we are talking about Trump country when we're like who country fans even are, and so like I don't know. So it's like, could you be authentically, we talked about this with Josh, like, could you be authentically atheist and be like a country music fan, a country music songwriter and have anyone want to listen to you? Because I don't really think you could. I think that like it's too far out of the fantasy of country to work.
I agree with you on the oversimplification thing, and like I'm hesitant to say that because like I don't want to generalize. It's like it's too easy, and like honestly, like I feel like then you're boiling country down to like red blue politics, right? And right. I think you're pulling the rug out from under you, in regards to like ever being able to like reach common ground with people that you probably have more in common with than you might think. But it's just like. Yeah, like, I don't know, man. Propaganda is a hell of a drug, and like, I don't think we ever came to a satisfying answer on whether that's what this fucking is a lot of the time. But kind of like, I don't know, in terms of like further exploring that idea, we asked him about this idea of like, oh, okay, like let's say hypothetically, that is who your fans are. Like, how do you reconcile with the fact that you're essentially like voluntarily signing up to go work for, Trump America? And here's what he had to say about that.
No, I accept the fact that there's a lot of ignorant people that like country music. There's a lot of ignorant people that like every genre, but
Yeah.
I'm aware of the history. I think about like during the Vietnam era, there was a country song called like Green Berets, and that was like really popular to push like the pro-war agenda. And then Toby Keith, his whole deal is just like,
you got it in America.
You got it. These colors don't run. You know what I mean? That's like his whole thing. And people fuck with Toby Keith.
Yeah.
It's complicated because he's like he supports the veterans, but he also supports war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bombing Afghanistan.
Yeah. So it's interesting. But because I am just the way I lean politically and the way I feel about things, I'm not going to be contributing to that. I'm just going to kind of use the music or kind of create music in the space that I think I will be not inherently evil. So that's how I feel about it. But yeah, it's weird. It's definitely. I'm doing something I don't think that is necessarily easy or is bound to have people question my motives. I'm not.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to I guess clear the air. I'm not trying to contribute to the military-industrial complex by making this pivot into country music.
Ian, I want to ask you, like, do you think there is a way to be active in country music without contributing to the potentially problematic themes that are prevalent, even if you don't sing them yourself? Like, if you build up the country space, and in country space, there is like some implicit racism, like God over country, the idea of mixing politics and religion, and like sexism and like the imperialism that we see in there. Like, is it possible to be proactive in a country space and not implicit in those aspects, implicitly involved?
I think absolutely, and I kind of applaud him for wanting to create a space where those sorts of things can be where something different can be discussed. And it's funny because you and I feel like met a lot this week to kind of bounce ideas off each other, because we did struggle with a lot of the questions we were asking, because it's like, are we being dismissive? Are we being diminutive? Are we overly generalizing? And one of the comparisons that we came to was like the opposite end of the spectrum, which is like hip hop, right? Where it's like everyone wants to go to, like, they want to talk about gangster rap and they want to talk about like Ice-T's like Cop Killer, and which is funny because like that shit was from like the fucking 90s or whatever, right? And like there's like boomers are still traumatized by it, Gen X too. But I mean, even within like hip hop as well, like there are so many, like you have Kendrick Lamar, and on one end of the spectrum you have fucking Megan Thee Stallion, like singing Wet Ass Pussy, and like Kendrick Lamar's like To Pimp a Butterfly, God man, who's the one I really like whose name I always fucking forget? Who did Kick Push? You remember?
Not Lupe Fiasco.
Lupe Fiasco, yeah.
Was Lupe Fiasco?
He has Black All Black Everything is a fucking like amazing, like very political song in terms of like reimagining race relations in the United States. Bitch Bad, which reexamines like hypermasculinity within the like hip hop framework. So it's like, you wouldn't look at rap and be like, it's all contributing to violence, or it's all glorifying like violence and like gang lifestyles, when there's so many different types of movements within hip hop. So I think it's the same for country.
I know there are themes in hip hop, in the same way that there are themes in country music, but it doesn't feel as pigeonholed as country music can come across. Like, if you want to be really successful and maybe I'm just being myopic right now, but it feels like if you want to be really successful in country music, you sing about beer, whiskey, babes, nostalgia of any kind. And then you're like successful, or like not successful, but you have at least a winning recipe, regardless, like how the execution works. I feel like maybe, as I say this, I'm like, maybe that's also the case for like hip hop and other genres. Like I know it's definitely the case for like EDM, or like dance music generally. I don't know. It still feels like there's something there. And I guess like in the best case scenario, you're making country music. Who are your listeners in the best case scenario? Like if you want to be like he seems like a progressive left leaning dude. Like if you have that ethical framework, who are you trying to sell to? Like, is he trying to profit off of Trump supporters, or like, I don't know, like who could he I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, who could he possibly be trying to get money from, like in an ethical way? Or is it ethical to accept money from anyone as long as you're making good art?
I would say like their money is probably better off in his pocket than like Toby Keith's, But I mean, like, it's weird because I like he mentioned as well, like Toby Keith is probably donating to like foundations that help disabled veterans and shit. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what Josh's foundation would be, but I have a feeling you and I would be like, fuck yeah with it. But it's funny when he mentioned the Vietnam War too, because like the Vietnam War is like really where, and country was always political, but mostly because they were always trying to like, spread the word, like play and make money wherever they could. Like early country, like country musicians could be booked for like a pro-communism rally one week and then a Ku Klux Klan meeting the next.
Jesus
Christ. Like it was just, but I mean, no, it's like, it's really though, like it was because it was all about populism, right? It was all about like bringing people together, people over power. And in the Vietnam, like that switched or whatever, because I guess what had happened was like most of the people being drafted were disproportionately being drafted from the South. So a lot of country musicians felt like they needed to, represent their base and sing songs for who they felt were people doing their duty. And like, I'm thinking of Merle Haggard's song, like they don't smoke dope in Muskogee or something like that. And like, he's got lines in the song about like, oh, we don't burn our draft cards and shit like that. And, I think that kind of drew a line in the sand in terms of like, are you with us or against us? Like, our boys are over here fighting for freedom. Where, quote unquote, like where do you stand on the line? Yeah. That didn't answer your question at all. That was a completely different, Tyra. But I mean, I guess you kind of get what I'm saying, right? Like,
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can see like who country listeners are, but like best case, are you saying that country listeners would be people like the best case country listeners you could have are like people who just have like in their mind a noble cause?
No, oh God, that's not what I'm saying at all, because that's what Confederate soldiers were. Like they believed in the lost cause. Yeah.
So then who are the best case listeners then for country music?
I don't know.
You and me?
I don't know, but it's like there's a difference, I think, between a listener and a fan. And I think the fan is very much rooted in like the country identity, wherein I think for the country music fan has like a perennial chip on their shoulder. And it's, you and I were joking off the record that like no other genre mentions the country in it. Like rappers aren't like, farmers just don't understand, motherfucker. And like, oh, I don't know why. Okay. Moving off of that. Jesus Christ. It was like my dad imitating a black person. I was not comfortable with that. Like, okay, let's say Eminem. I'm Eminem now, so it's okay. He's like, oh, never go to farms in Michigan, bitch. I killed my wife. And like in pop music, like, Bruno Mars isn't like, Outback Cadillac, I'm never going to a log cabin. Like country music is like the only genre that like reliably will mention that they're better off in the South than they would ever be up North. And like, last time we talked about onlyfarmers.com, that dating site. Like, can you imagine if Tinder came out and they were like, swipe to find a girlfriend, those dirty, filthy fucking farmers would never learn how to use this website.
Well, I feel like that's implicitly true and everyone already gets it, which I think is why farmers only had to make...
of course.
They had to make a very simple version of...
Yeah.
So if you're a farmer out there, this podcast is not for you. Farmer folks just don't get it. But to your point, Ian, I feel like, yeah, it's true that, we're not like I speak for all like urbanites in the US, but like, like in pop music and hip hop and, electronic music and indie, we don't often talk about, excluding country people at all, but like, especially hip hop talks a lot about the lived experience they have in in inner city. Like that's often talked about. Like Atlanta hip hop, like often talks about what it's like growing up in like the South as a Black person. It's funny. I'm like, even indie music talks about like life in the suburbs, which is also not like the rural life. Like a lot of the themes I talk about is like they talk about suburban life. So it's not.
But they don't explicitly state I'll never move to the country. Yeah. The country in these songs is never like an entity that is nefarious or out to get them and ruin their way of life.
Yeah, well, I would say you're absolutely right. But I will say that when the country folk, when they're like shitting on the city, I feel like a lot of the times. I have heard like a couple examples. I was like, damn, you really hate the city. But like a lot of the times it feels like it's just like, we have our own simple life out here. But it's true. I mean, like country life is simpler. And, it is like a slower life. It's a different lifestyle. Like, and no one argues that, obviously. I think that they
I think that's incorrect. And I'm going to let you finish and then I'm going to explain why.
Well, no, now you fucking interrupted me. Go ahead and defend yourself.
It was more for me. I'm like, I don't want to forget. I've got something to say about this.
No, go ahead.
So I think in the city, you're surrounded by millions of people to the extent that when a relationship no longer serves its purpose, it is easier for you to sever ties and never have to see someone again.
Right.
And I know someone who's going through this right now, and the solution is just cut this person out of your life. When you live in a rural area, when your community is smaller, interpersonal relationships are far much more complicated because you cannot cut these people out of your life, and you are forced to navigate a far more complicated social structure, hierarchy, rules, norms, and navigate like different types of gossip and information sharing than you ever would have to in an urban area. Not to mention the fact that the lack of infrastructure makes your life more complicated, the lack of ability to gain resources like lower wages, poor, already mentioned the, less infrastructure. For all intents and purposes, it is not simple at all. It's just one of the many lies country music spreads that people start to fucking believe.
When you were like telling, I was like, it's a different lifestyle. And you're like, I thought that's the point you were contradicting or like arguing. I was like, how is that not a different lifestyle? But you're on the
simple more complicated. Point. It's not simple. Yeah. Yeah. It's, well, but I don't know. I feel like they praise like, it's just, we just keep things simple down here. No, you don't. You're lying.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. Like, obviously, navigating social interactions when you can never escape them, when you're like, and I imagine it's very hard for your wife to also be your cousin. Like, I know that's a very challenging thing to navigate for everyone involved. But nonetheless, like I think I don't know. I feel like there's a simplicity, and maybe this is just from visiting. Like I've never spent a lot of time living in the country, but my dad lives far. It's funny. He lives on like 5 acres. Like I grew up on a dirt road. My dad's not even on a dirt road. Like whatever. But it's like you're like out there where you can like just fucking shoot assault rifles in your yard, like in Texas, like that vibe. It feels country enough. Anyway, when I go out there, it still does feel like a simple life. Like you drive everywhere. Like there's like where you're gonna eat. It's either the fucking Checkers, the fucking Burger King, or the fucking McDonald's, or you're gonna go to like Piggly Wiggly's or one of these other like rural places, and you're gonna get steak. And you're going to eat it with potatoes. And that's like all you're going to fucking do. Like, there's like a prescription to life that I think is what they refer to. And I think it is simple in some ways. Like here, I don't know. And I'm oversimplifying again, but like here, like lifestyle in my lifestyle in New York, it's like, okay, well, who the fuck am I going to run into? I could literally run into anyone. Like I have no idea what I'm going to see walking out my door. Literally, I have no fucking idea. Like today, for instance, and I'm sure a lot of New Yorkers can relate, it was just an ungodly amount of dog shit smeared everywhere in front of my house. Like what the fuck? Just use a goddamn bag and throw it away. There's a trash can like in front of every fucking house. Just fucking throw it away. Regardless. I think I just wanted to talk about the dog shit.
I'm glad you found a space for it. Kudos. So like, and we wonder why cockroaches die on their backs looking up, right?
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. Like, I still do think, I definitely do think that if we're thinking about a white audience, I think that there's the chip on the shoulder.
Yeah.
And I do think that, like, I think the North absolutely lives rent free in the fucking South's heads.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that old joke, right? Like, oh, what does the North think of the South? It doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that at the root of that is like this white anxiety, that it's just like, oh my God, like we're losing our way of life. And they think that that's tied to identity politics when really that's tied to transnational capital, like, and I'm thinking of farms in Arizona. They're like, like, oh my God, like gay people are going to move into our neighborhood and make us eat quiche. And under their noses, I think it was like Kuwait or whatever bought like all of the water rights in Arizona and like literally built industrial wells and like completely drained all of these towns' resources. And I'm like, and you were worried about quiche?
Right.
So
yeah, it's definitely like a Republican governor who approved it all. And it's like, yeah, I'm here for jobs. And it's like, don't worry about your water. There's jobs coming soon.
Yeah. So, it's funny though, is like, there is, I think, at the heart of country music, when we think about, especially we're thinking consciously about, all right, who's the audience for this? I think that country music outlines beautifully and functions as like an excellent illustration of the like absolute ineffectiveness of identity politics. And what I mean by that is I think of the way that capitalism has this very special way in terms of like, so that it can consistently never run out of things to commodify. It ends up like you turn your suffering or you turn the things that are like make your life difficult into an aspect of your identity. Like, oh, you live on a dirt road and every time you drive on this like gravel asphalt, your windshield cracks. That's not a tragedy. That's country. Oh, you don't have access you live in a food desert and like you have to catch fish and sometimes you don't get vegetables. That's country. Oh, there's no hospitals around and you had to duct tape your finger back on after you cut it off with a buzzsaw. That's not, shoddy healthcare infrastructure. That's country. And I don't think this is, and I know that like the North likes to kind of like stick its thumb the nose up, whatever.
Really have no idea.
Like look at that and laugh. But the North is just as guilty of this. Like in urban areas, it's the same fucking thing. And I'm thinking of like, oh, you have to have 5 roommates, and then they turn it into the new Fox comedy, Rent-A-Rooney or whatever, and like every episode is just them trying to pair. I'm thinking about 2 broke girls, right? Following like, and we made a meme about this on the site, but it's like, oh, the joke is that they're poor. Get it? Ha 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 ha. So it's like, I feel like your misfortune is kind of laid bare in front of you. And in order to, I guess, retain some semblance of dignity, you turn it into an identity and then you take pride in that. Mm. And I think country music kind of highlights the for me, it's very sorrowful. Like I look at that, I'm like, oh my God, like you're eating it up. Why?
Mm. Well, it's funny because I mean there are like the roots of country is like blues. Like it's inherently like there's a lot of that in its history. I think where you turn like your sorrow into you sing your sorrow. And I mean like honestly, I was listening on my jog this morning. I was listening to a bunch of songs. I was like talking about like brown eyes crying blue or something like that, or no, brown eyes turning blue. I can't remember, but it was like talking about like being sad. And I was just like, oh yeah, there's like so much. I mean, there is a bunch of fucking sorrow in country music generally. I don't know how else are you supposed to deal with challenging situations? I at least like in the contrast in like the commodification in Rent-A-Rooney, this fall's Fox special. Like at least it's like
I'm sorry. I love that you used the name of the show.
Like I feel like the inherent differences here is like no one like really likes that. You know what I mean? And like maybe and maybe to your point, or maybe the point you're making is like that it's just a matter of time. After season 4, we'll be like, oh my God, what a fucking amazing lifestyle those 5 people had together. I want that. I want to be a rent-a-roonster myself and, do the whatever in the same way that country music fans have adopted their lifestyle. But I also don't know, like hardship is going back into the 1800s. And like when you're talking about like the Scottish influence of country music, like the folk influence, like hardship has been in there from the beginning. I don't know.
Let's not forget the roots too of formerly freed slaves.
Absolutely. Hardship,
freed former slaves. Sorry.
So like it's in there. It's in there deep. I honestly don't hate that aspect of it. Like that's one of the aspects that I do find to be a little bit more palatable, maybe redeemable, depending on when you ask me.
No, but I mean, I don't know. It's just, to me, it seems interesting that like, and I think, I don't know, like part of me thinks like this is why we can't have better things. Like why it's been so hard to like initiate progress in the fucking South, man. Like Jesus Christ, like for the most part, it's urbanized. Like, why isn't there better infrastructure? Like, why did Doctors Without Borders have to go to fucking Appalachia? Like in the richest country in the world? Like, it's mind blowing to me. And to try and like airbrush over that and be like, that like that hashtag that's just country. I don't know. I feel like that's I think where my problem with like placating the country audience comes from. Like less Toby Keith, more fucking like the dead Kennedys of country or something like that. Like bring back that shit. It's just like, and it's funny too, because we joked about like rebel country, and like all these fuckers flying like Confederate flags, like yeah, rebellion, and then on the same, like literally in the exact same tune, talking about like going to Iraq. And the parallel to that is like after England, like subjugated India. And then made Indians fight in their like wars around the globe. It's the same energy. It's like the exact same energy. It's like, oh, you're like, I'm a rebel. Oh, this land conquered me. Oh, I'm gonna fight in this conquering lands wars because that's patriotic. Even though I still fly the flag of the nation that lost to this country. It's just like I don't know. Like there's so much irony and there's so much like it stands so loudly for nothing. It's deafening.
That's really well put. I actually really like that little ending there.
Thank you. Yeah, I like that too. It's like, ooh.
Got a tie to tighten. So, no, I think you're bringing up some great points. We've gotten far away from our guest, which is a shame because he does have some good points still there in the chamber to use some overused country expressions or at least themes. So we asked Josh, like, a little bit about kind of this idea of just like, okay, well, what is interesting about the South? Like, what are you doing in the country space? Like, what are you going to add to it? Like, what is your whole reason of making this transition into country? And why do you like the South? Like, what's worth idolizing? And here's what he had to say about it.
I think I want to really write songs and really use the genre as a means of like challenging its conventions. I think whenever, there's, again, going back to the idea that country music in a lot of ways kind of like pushes forth all these like right-wing Protestant conservative ideals. So that makes me want to write a song about being vulnerable as a man. It makes me want to write a song about struggling with mental health. It makes me want to write a song about all the whatever can challenge that. I think is really interesting to me. And just to go back to the part of your question, what's interesting about the South? I think America as a whole is in a, we constantly have to just reevaluate and question our very problematic history, and the South is probably the biggest, the region where that conversation and those questions need to be asked. And so people like country music in the South, though, that can be an avenue for that as well. I haven't heard a country song written by or sung performed by a white person about like white privilege, for example. I haven't heard a country song about, you know, like why the stars and bars are fucked up. You know, so there's a lot of space there. I want to be subversive. Exactly. Yeah. I want to get my foot in the door by writing really, really catchy shit so I like can establish myself. And then I want to be like, I want to fuck with people's minds. That's my goal.
So I love the energy he comes at this with. Like I actually like when he was telling me this and when we were talking with him, I was just like, I'm sorry, Ian. When he was telling us this, when we were talking with him, I really
forgiven.
Thank you, brother. I really was like, I just love that. I was like, yeah, no, dude, yeah, fuck the system, like undermine this shit, like get in there. And then I was like, took me a second. I took a step back and I was like, I'm not sure a song about white privilege in the country space would work at all. Like, I think we're 10 to 15 years out from when like whoever the next fucking Taylor Swift is going to come along and like do her like breakout song or his breakout song and then just be like, yeah, white privilege, like, you know, fuck white privilege, dismantle the patriarchy. Like, I don't see that happening at all anytime soon. So like, Ian, like, do you think in the country space, like you could sell a song about white privilege right now?
So I'm thinking about it in like this context. So like you have someone who thinks that they need to teach that like someone who like, you know, oh, you need to hear this, you need to learn this. And I'm just thinking about like kind of the same energy, like I don't know, like a rapper who's like, I'm gonna sing a song, I'm gonna make a rap song called "Welfare Queens," like, I mean, you know, right? Like, I'm assuming that would not go over well, you know.
Yeah, I imagine that the people who they're talking to, like, just really don't, especially, and like, you know, it's so interesting because like I only bring this up because I really think it would matter to the listeners of country, but I think especially a man who self-identifies as Jewish from New York, like they're like a Jewish urbanite. I don't think they're gonna give a fuck. They're gonna be like, you're just a fucking poser. You know, like you're coming in here and you're just trying to infiltrate. Like I think they'll read his motives too soon. You know, like I don't know who would have to do it. It would have to be. I mean, I don't know. He has the right idea. It would have to be someone who comes in, wins their hearts over by singing some beautiful country ballads or jams or like hardcore party rocking country music, and then be like, yeah, fucking Josh gets it, man. He is like the country king. And then be like, hey, have you guys ever considered like implicit racial bias? And they'll be like, ha, no, dude, fuck you. You're canceled. Take the Dixie out of your name and get out of here.
That's what I'm thinking of, man. Again, like I'm thinking of the Dixie Chicks, right? Who, you know, and I actually looked it up. Apparently at a concert or something, they were like, oh, we're embarrassed that the president is from Texas or something like that, which like I would get too. Like I would actually be pissed as well. Like if they came out and were like, we think the Iraq War is a farce to help bolster the military-industrial complex and create a false sense of American prosperity and give us, you know, instill in us the same sense of pride that we took in fighting the Cold War. Then, like, yeah, I would get the cancellation. Or no, I would. Then I was like, fuck yeah, but apparently they were just like, we're embarrassed that the president is from Texas. Like, smart people can come from Texas. Like, I'm sure that they're like. I've never met one, but I'm sure they're there now.
Yeah, there's like there is like an aspect of like maybe classism or regionalism, if that's like a fucking thing that matters. But like, so wait, back up just a little bit. So that's why they got canceled, is because of that, or no? They just also said that. I
checked out a book on the history of country music.
Who and are you?
Look at me go. One of the examples that they used was the Dixie Chicks, and apparently they said, we're embarrassed that the president is from Texas. And I guess that got conflated. I mean, maybe it was. Maybe they were embarrassed because of the Iraq War. And maybe
are they from Texas?
The Dixie Chicks?
Because that would make sense if they're like, we're from Texas, we're embarrassed that this piece of shit president is also from Texas. Like,
all right, well, there's only one thing left to do.
That makes sense.
Where are the Dicks? No, not with the C. The wrong one. That Dixie Chicks from? Dallas, Texas. Yeah. So I guess that makes more sense.
Look at the context king coming in here. You know what? That was a great learning experience for both of us. I think like you got to learn how to Google for the first time in Camp Reeducation history.
I think that was the first time I maybe Googled something in the history of the show.
And I got to learn how it feels to graciously accept being right. So this is this is great for both of us.
I don't like how either of those things felt. I'm coming out in opposition to both of them, to learning and to grace.
Nice.
Yeah, and a noise. But yeah, man, I don't know. And you know what? You know where I think this comes from? I was thinking a lot also about like the history of the South, because I thought a lot about like what it means to be Southern when I lived in the South, and I thought about it a lot when I was traveling abroad, but it means to like come from the South. And like, you know, my parents, someone would always tell me that whenever you travel, you're an ambassador for your country. You know, like you're the only impression someone might get from, the United States or from Florida. And people tell me all the time, like when they find out I'm from Florida, they're like, oh, like you don't strike me as a Floridian. I'm like, what do you think I was going to like pull an alligator out of my pants and like train it to bite your dick? Like, explain that to me. But I think that when we, earlier we mentioned the chip on the shoulders of like Southerners, and I think that's just like the through line in like Southern history, right? Like post Civil War, where first they blamed like, the North for like their absolutely dilapidated conditions after they admittedly did come in and like fuck up all Sherman burned down Georgia.
Right. Well, I will say like it just to go back a little bit to what you're saying about the feelings of being Southern. Like, first of all, I don't even know if I consider like it's funny you say that we're from the South, like you more than me, but even then, because I'm for people who don't know Florida geography, like I'm from South Florida. It's way more Miami vibes than it is fucking Atlanta vibes. And
you said that last time. We get it. You're from Miami.
I got that Latin blood. So it's
like, you know what? No, you lived in like the New Jersey of Miami, okay?
That's
Shut
true.
up.
That's really true. It's funny because I like brag about two very different ideas often when I talk. It's like, yeah, dirt roads, country farms, like I get it, but it's like, but it was like Miami's country. It's like, make up your fucking mind.
Imagine Miami in 1840.
Yeah, that's basically what it was. Well, what I was going to say was like, I had, and I guess, I don't know exactly what the point is here, but I remember when I would go abroad and I would introduce myself, they would say, where are you from? And I remember this all the time. Like, they'd be like, tell me where you're from. And I would never say America ever because I hated the connotation, but I was very happy to say Florida, actually. And I would say, and people would be like, oh, Florida. Wow. And I think the thing people immediately associate with that, and I think the reason I liked it was like beaches. And like Orlando and Disney and like that aspect of it. So like, and I know that's a little bit different than the connotation that you'd have with the South. I think if I had said like Alabama or if I had said Georgia and people knew what that was, like the people I was talking to abroad,
like, oh,
yeah, they'd be like, oh, that's like, that's like really like deep South country, right? Like, what's it like growing there? And I don't know. Honestly, I think I would probably have an affinity towards it, like a nostalgic affinity to some degree that these people do. And just to honestly, like, this has me thinking a little bit about one of our coworkers, Nika, likes listening to country music. I think I mentioned this in the first episode. And we went out and did karaoke, and she did Carrie Underwood's song about like, destroying her cheating ex-boyfriend's car. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, I took the AK-47 and killed his family and sent them to heaven.
Yeah, it's like that. And I remember like her playing it, and I remember being like, oh, that's an interesting choice. Like, why, like, is it haha funny? Like, the fashions for fun thing that we've been talking about. And I'm like, I don't really feel like I fucking get this joke. And then I was like, oh, she's actually from like South Virginia. I was like, she has a
West Virginia.
She's not from West Virginia.
There's no South Virginia. There's Virginia and then there's West Virginia.
She's from the south of Virginia.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So she's that's hilarious. I love it.
Sorry.
And I was like, so she actually probably does have like this like relationship that I imagine maybe I would have if I was from like the deep south of Atlanta or like deep south of Alabama or Georgia. And I think you have to have like a different relationship, probably also with country music, if you have that lived experience, because the nostalgia they're talking about is probably somewhat shared with your experiences.
I think there's some truth to that, but I mean, like what I was kind of like building up to in terms of like this idea that like, oh, I'm going to be subversive is, I think like, again, like following Reconstruction and like, following the Reconstruction, it was like the South blamed all its woes on the North. And then following that and entering the Jim Crow era, it blamed all of its woes on Black people. And then following, after that, and then it was like the New Deal and they're like blaming all their woes on like fucking Roosevelt and like, just ad infinitum. So I think there's like always been this sense that like the issues that they face are the fault of other people. And there is this, I think in the South, there is this like shirking off of responsibility and chalking everything up to like being at the mercy of someone else. And again, like in a world where, we're talking about, especially in the South right now, probably most heavily, like they're literally even talking like this, like enabling this attitude has led to the sort of decision making that leads lawmakers to feel like they need to like limit voting rights or like restrict voting access because like if we don't do something, we're just going to keep getting taken advantage of, and it's just like I don't know that you'll ever be able to talk them out of that. If I don't know, like I guess so. 2-part question. Number one. Do you think there's any semblance of truth to that, or am I really reaching? What do you think?
No, I think you draw like a pretty
picture.
I was gonna say I think you draw like a pretty picture.
I planted the seed. I'm sorry. I planted the seed.
A very pretty picture. Of like, and I mean, especially when you're talking about like the history, like there's a through line there that you can follow that I think holds some water. I don't know. I wonder if this is like the same, like if there's like some of maybe the same thing that's happening when you're like, well, yeah, they just blame everything on someone else. Like if you're just like, well, they all do this one thing as well. Like if, there's like the same, like
generalize again.
Generalizing. Yeah. It's just like, I don't know. I mean, on the fucking idea we talk about all the time, there's like there's so much nuance to this. But like, if you only ever talk about nuance, then you don't really get anywhere. There's also like, you need to paint with broad strokes sometimes to like finish the canvas, or whatever. I'm sure there's like a better way to make
like that. No, I like that one a lot. Yeah, you need to finish the canvas. Otherwise, what do you got? Pointillism? Boo.
So anyway, I don't know. Going back to like whether or not like Josh, like if there's a way for a subversive artist to come through, make like a bunch of hits, and then like start like kind of undermining the legacy in some ways, like using the legacy of country to undermine its less favorable qualities. Do I think it's possible? I think it's happening actually in some ways already. I'll point to people like I got nothing.
I think you just answered your own question. And I will just tack on real quick. I'm pessimistic that it could happen, but it'd be nice. It'd be nice if more people like, Josh started making country music.
Yeah. Well, I do know a lot of new country music is talking about other themes that generally were not included, including like expanding what can be considered air quotes country. And like in a way that like it does, it is undermining it. You're kind of ripping up the floorboards in some aspects, but you're using those to build an amazing sunroom, and it's really nice in there. And you're definitely going to want to spend some time.
Yeah, and not to belabor the point too much, but I do feel like this is also like the history of country. Like this is what happened in the '60s and '70s, right?
Sure,
like they were tearing up the floorboards, and they were like, Bob Dylan. They were like claiming him, like, oh yeah, he's one of us. And like the Americana as well, and then like in the '80s, they were like, no, back to the roots. And they again like there was like the neo-traditionalists, and I don't know, maybe will the cycle ever end? I think but I think that is a good parallel to any culture, right? Like anytime you introduce new elements, you have that that fragment, this section of the country that's like, no, return to tradition. Like we're straying from the ideals of the false. You know what I'm thinking? Like, it literally, you're gonna hate me. In the back of my head, the whole time I was like, don't quote Hegel, don't quote Hegel, don't quote Hegel. So Hegel talked about this,
of course.
And well, no, he just, you know what? No, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it at all. I'm not gonna talk about it. I'm gonna lead us. I'm not gonna go back to my roots. I'm not gonna go back to like makeup camp and be like, "Oh, Hegel said." And we're gonna go to our favorite segment, How Brain, How Feel.
But before we do, we're gonna talk about our Patreon. So if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead, do it now. What are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for?
We only get better when there's more stuff of us to listen to.
So good.
There's probably also like director's cuts of stuff that Ian has done completely on his own. I've never seen our Patreon, and so I have no idea what it looks like. But I'm pretty sure there's a lot of cool stuff there. Sarah Broski will tell you all about it on our group chat. Anyway, so with that, how brain, how feel? How brain, how feel? How brain, how feel? How brain, how feel? How brain, how feel?
Hello there. Welcome to How Brain, How Feel. I have to stop doing this. Welcome to How Brain, How Feel, our favorite end of camp recap to see if and how our minds have changed, or if we've just become more convinced of our initial preconceptions. Shaye, in terms of the needle, did it budge? Did it stay put?
Okay, so has the needle moved? So I'm going to say this. I cried today listening to a country music song.
Wow, what song?
It was Watching You by Rodney Atkins. I actually showed it to my girlfriend Stephanie, and I was like, Stephanie, I heard this song. It made me tear up a little bit, and I want to show it to you. And so we put it on our little Bluetooth speaker in the living room, and put it on, and we kind of just like swayed back and forth. It has like, like a bobbing kind of beat to it. So we're both bouncing back and forth listening to the song. And the song is just really fucking touching about a father like watching his son grow up, and the son like taking pride in the relationship and just being like, I want to be just like you. Like, look, I did this thing that you did. Like, I've been watching you. I want to be like you. I'm your little buckaroo. One day,
Look, Dad, I hit Mom just like you.
Honestly, they have like two things. They're like, oh, I'm holding Mom's hand just like you. But then they're also just like, look, I talk to your imaginary friend just like you do. I get down on my hands and knees and I cross my arms and I like talk to no one just like you do every night. And I beg for help.
I beg for help. Dad, I'm begging, Dad, just like you.
Just like you. But no, I did cry. And honestly, and not only that, there's been a couple songs where I'm like, this is a really fucking good song. And like, it honestly, like it is like this nostalgia porn kind of vibe that comes out of this. Like I mean, you feel it. Like, I'm a fucking sucker for nostalgia. It's such an intense feeling for me. But to Josh's point, in everything he was talking about the merits of country music, there are some really, really beautiful songs in there. Like, there's themes that I fucking hate, like guns, like the imperialism, racism, like implicitly. And like, obviously I fucking hate that shit. Like, honestly, like driving drunk, like shit like that. But like, the songwriting is good. Like, a lot of times the melodies really are super good. And like, the aspects that they borrow from other popular music, I really appreciate. Like when you start hearing like a little bit of samba in like some of the 90s country music I heard, I'm like, dude, I fuck with that. That sounds kind of cool. Or like they put like a little bit of funk in it. I'm like, fucking love that. Or like even goddamn Blake Shelton's song, God's Country. Hate the message. Really fucking hate the message. But like before we recorded today, you came on to the, into the Zoom meeting I had started. I was just like fucking singing along, like blasting some fucking God's Country by Blake Shelton. And it's like, sounds like AWOL Nation, which I hate, and a little bit like Nickelback, which you have to hate. So like there's like a little bit of each in there. And like, I don't know, like I don't hate that, but, and I know I've been going on for a while, but I do want to say this one thing.
No, you're fine.
I'm afraid to say I like country music because I feel like it lumps me in with the fans of country music, and I hate those people. Like, I've had so many experiences with the demographic that country music is actually geared towards that, like, associating myself with the music that they listen to really upsets me. And knowing that it's also Trump's base's music makes me want to distance myself from it. But like, actually, as music, like a lot of it is like pretty good. Notwithstanding Trump themes like imperialism and the rest, and the fans, like my fucking high school bullies that listen to fucking, like the fucking rednecks that like threw footballs at me in art class. Like, fuck those guys. Kyle Grasso, if you're fucking listening, I fucking hate you. I've never forgiven you. Okay.
Nice. It's man, I'm not gonna name drop because they're like
they're gonna come after you.
No, because this guy, I still might. He probably still lives in our hometown, and he looks like he would kill me. You know what I'm reminded of? There was this. I think, if memory serves me correctly, I believe there was a group of boys in my hometown called the Whiteheads. I'm not making that up. And I think they died when they launched their truck off of a boat ramp into like the lake or something.
What, on purpose?
Into the St. Johns River. I don't know, but I just remember hearing that they drowned. And like, even, what's so funny? I was like, when I heard that story, my first thought was, fuck, that's country.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, but I mean, that's not my final thought. I don't know why.
Anyway, with that, let's end the show.
You bringing up Kyle Lasso just reminded of
Kyle Grasso. Okay, he's not getting a pass because someone didn't Google him right.
And when I was in 5th grade, there was this kid named Kyle that tried to convince everyone he was like way more advanced than everyone else, and like he was talking about, I think his older siblings were fucking with him, and he was talking about like, yeah, I got a girlfriend. We spit in each other's mouths. And we were like, Kyle, what the fuck? And like, he's like, yeah, that's what you do when you're in love. You guys wouldn't get it. I get it because I'm mature. And I'm just like, I hope that was a lie. Because B, I really hate the idea of like these fucking 10-year-olds spitting back and forth in each other's mouths because that's what they've been kissing is.
Oh my God.
That's country. So anyway, I don't know. For me, honestly, man, I think country is like, yeah, it's a great storytelling genre. I think it was. I'm sure there's still some of that exists, but I think for the most part, it's largely become like a simulacrum, and it's just like it's a reflection of a reality that it was questionable to begin with, that nobody alive now has ever known. And like somehow managing to convince its vast audience that like not only has it been lost, but it was actually taken from them. And it was taken from them by like New York City and fucking like trans people and China. And it's just like, that's kind of what I get, where it's just like, this is beautiful, but it's not real. And even like beautiful is a stretch, I guess. I mean, like, I don't know, like, the story of the relationships are actually very touching. He stopped loving her today by I think, what is it, George Jones? That song is amazing. You talk about a song that almost made me cry, like actively fighting back tears. I was just like, fuck, dude, this is really beautiful. And dude, talk about, what song I re-listened to that I forgot about, and like I like remembered my life at the period when I was like listening to this song was, oh God, what was it? It was who's the guy that looks like Tommy Lee Jones? Johnny Cash. It was Johnny Cash's cover of Hurt, Pain.
Yeah, Hurt by Nine Inch Nails.
Hurt. Oh my fucking God, dude. I like that song, man. Jeez, his version of it.
Yeah.
Fuck. So I will say this. Country music really knows how to tap into relatable pain. I think a lot of pop, I think a lot of like indie taps into the abstract emotion, like the abstract idea of pain, of loss, of love. But country without that affectation just tells you exactly what happened. And, sometimes it's not all totally there, but enough is there to be like, fuck, man, this happened to me and this sucked, dude. And you are nailing this right now,
Yeah, I do. I love that, and I mean that's definitely been my experience with like the music I've been listening to. Like the last couple of days, really, what I've been hearing is greatest hits. I've been listening to just a lot of great. I'm like, I want to know like what's just the best you have to offer me. And because of that, I kind of want to push back a little bit on your final thoughts.
No,
just to
end the show.
Bye
everyone.
Just to have it on the record.
Bye everyone. Thanks for tuning in this week. Go ahead. All right, go ahead.
You know, and because I think I was definitely agreeing with you about like the reflection of a reality that never existed. You know, like you've created like a memory that just wasn't. Because at least in my experience of the last week, I don't. While they talk about nostalgia, a lot of this nostalgia was like, no, this was like definitely a lived experience, and oftentimes it was like my lived experience. Even like, you know, like they just like talk about those things. Where I'm just like this. Like I relate to this, and they don't. Many songs don't allude to like the good old days, like in the way that like I think that really upsets you and me because when to the point where we're like, when were those good old days? Like, tell me exactly. You know, like the point that you and even Josh made in the interview, which is like, what decade exactly are you talking about? You know, because obviously each decade has its own like horrors that were neglected.
I think I'm also speaking to like the nationalism too, because it's funny, man. If you ask, I feel like these people, like, because there are the people that are, I don't want to say embarrassed, critical of the United States, and like they have plenty of things that they want to like point out or whatever. When you ask other people, like when you ask really nationalist people, like, what is it that you love so much about this country? Like, one of the things they'll point to is like, oh, like, you know, like, our president was a black man. Like, we've got diversity. But like, it's like, you hate diversity. Like, you absolutely hate this about your country. Like, you're actively trying to make sure that you don't have to see it. That's why you live in a gated white community. So I think I'm speaking to that, and I'm speaking more of like the nationalism. And God, man, you know what I'm reminded of? And I think, honestly, dude, I think this is a problem, and I think it needs to stop being perpetuated, because if it doesn't stop being perpetuated, we'll never correct it. We'll just keep going on this course where we're dumping like the fucking military budget will just be like $2 trillion every year. But I remember when I was watching that documentary, there was this country musician singer, and I think she was an actor with like her two sons. And in the Vietnam War, I think one was enlisted and then one died in combat. Wow. And the one who was enlisted like was so traumatized by his brother's death, he ended up committing suicide. So toward the end of the Vietnam War, there was a protest group, and they stopped at her house, and they were like, you know, ma'am, we just wanted to see if you would like to join us. Because, you know, we know what happened to your son, and we thought that maybe you would be interested in coming with us to protest the Vietnam War. And her response was like, my son died, so you have the freedom to protest the Vietnam War. And it's like, I'm sorry, that is factually incorrect. Like, that is not what the Vietnam War was about. Like, in any way, shape, or form. Like, nobody in Vietnam was fighting for our freedom. Nobody in Iraq is fighting for our freedom. Nobody in Afghanistan is fighting for our freedom. We are literally there to enrich the military-industrial complex. And anything that you tell yourself otherwise is fucking false. And I think that like a genre that perpetuates nobility in that is doing more harm than good every time they encourage someone of high school age to think that it's good to fight in a pointless war. So it's like, I think that's the mythology that I'm really like angry about, and I think needs to go the fuck away. So you're right, though. I mean, like the relationship thing, I think that's real. I think the storytelling aspect is beautiful, but when I think about country music's problem, it's that problem, and it's a big problem.
I'm really glad you clarified, because I think you're absolutely right. There's definitely.
Well, you're right too. I didn't mean it. I hope I didn't make it seem like I was jumping down your throat, because I'm not. But I'm like,
not at all.
Here it comes.
No, I love seeing you passionate about it, Ian, because it's something you know a lot about. You're such a good and smart boy, and we love you so very much.
I love that I said this in a fucking SpongeBob SquarePants. I look like Jimmy Buffett on his way. I already made the Jimmy Buffett sex tourism thing. I got to make a different one. Well, our friend Charlie just said I can't make any more jokes because of the YouTube algorithm. So something Jimmy Buffett at a school function.
Also,
we'll beat those out, Charlie.
It was John Schmeg who said that.
Sorry, John Schmeg.
Big fan of the show. Okay. Well, I think that is all we have. You can tell because our featured artist for this week has already queued up. So without any further ado, if you are watching, again, go listen to our Spotify playlist. But if you're listening, prepared for the sultry sounds of the Jerichos with Even If You Are a Cactus.
Camp Reeducation would like to thank you, the listener, for listening. To hear interviews and other bonus content in its entirety, become a monthly supporter and join our Patreon, where you'll get access to those and tons of other fun goodies.
Here at Camp, we love talking over great music. If you want to hear more amazing music like the song you just heard, then follow our playlist on Spotify.
We hope you enjoyed this camp as much as we did. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and everywhere else. And don't forget to stay tuned for our next camp, where we ask the question, is Disney evil? We think it is. We hope you do too.